my child. I need you to stop right now. Whatever you were doing, wherever your mind was, I need you here with me in this moment. Because what I am about to tell you is not something you stumbled upon by accident. You did not find this video. This video found you. I arranged it. I placed it in your path at this exact hour of this exact day. Because there is a promise, a real, ancient, binding, heaven-backed promise that has your name written on it, and you have been living your entire life without knowing it exists. And that changes tonight. I know that sounds like something you have heard before. I know the landscape of your skepticism. I know what happens inside you when someone begins with big words and sweeping statements, because you have been disappointed before. You have been handed promises by people who meant well and could not deliver. You have been handed hope that turned into another layer of grief when it did not come through. You have sat in services where someone declared blessing over you and then walked out into a life that still felt the same. I know all of that. I am not asking you to pretend that history does not exist. I am asking you to stay long enough to let me show you why this is different. Why this particular promise is different from every human promise you have ever received. Why this one holds in a way that nothing else holds. Because the difference is not in the feeling. The difference is not in the enthusiasm of the delivery. The difference is in the source, and the source tonight is me. Do not close this. Please hear me when I say that. The thing I am going to reveal before this message is over, the specific promise, the specific ancient word that was spoken over the life of every person who belongs to me, and that has been sitting quietly in your Bible, either unpreached or mistranslated or passed over so quickly that it never had the chance to take root in the soil of your soul. That thing is coming. But I need to build toward it with you, because when it arrives, I want it to arrive with its full weight. I want it to land in you the way it was always meant to land. I want it to change not just your mood tonight, but the fundamental architecture of how you relate to me going forward. So stay. Every minute of this message is a piece of what I am building in you tonight. Do not skip ahead. Do not drift. Stay present with me. I want to begin where every real conversation between us has to begin, with the truth of where you are. And I do not mean where you are geographically. I mean where you are on the inside, because I see that place. I see it more clearly than you see it yourself, because you tend to look at your inner world through the distorting lens of shame or fear or exhaustion, and those lenses lie. They make things look worse than they are in some ways, and they make you blind to certain truths in others. But I look at you with clear eyes. I look at you with the eyes of the one who made you, the one who has known you since before the word, before had any meaning, the one who chose you before you had done anything to be chosen or rejected. And what I see when I look at you tonight is not what the shame wants you to believe I see. I see someone who has been trying. I see someone who wakes up in the morning and still tries to do right, even when the weight of everything makes the simplest things feel heavy. I see someone who prays, maybe not as often or as fluently as you wish you did, but who reaches toward me with something real, even when the words do not come. I see someone who has been holding on through a season that has lasted longer than you expected and tested you more deeply than you prepared for. I see the tiredness in you. I see the place where the faith has been stretched so thin that some days it feels like it might tear, and I want to speak directly into that place tonight. Not around it, not over it, into it. Because the promise I am going to give you tonight was specifically designed for that place. It was not designed for people who have everything figured out. It was not designed for the moment when life is easy and faith is effortless, and the evidence of my goodness is all around you, so that trusting me requires no courage at all. It was designed for the moment exactly like the one you are in right now, the stretched moment, the long moment, the moment when you need a word that goes deeper than encouragement, deeper than motivation, deeper than a nice feeling that will fade by morning. You need a word that holds, and that is exactly what I have for you. But before I reveal it, I need to take you somewhere. I need to take you back to the original language, the way I took you to the Hebrew last time, because there is something in the Greek this time, something in the language of the New Covenant that is going to open a door in you that has been closed for too long. The New Testament, the portion of Scripture that begins with the birth of my Son and carries through the letters of the apostles and the vision given to John on Patmos, was written in Greek, but not classical Greek, the formal literary Greek of philosophers and poets. It was written in what scholars call Koine Greek, common Greek, everyday Greek, the Greek that fishermen and merchants and soldiers and mothers used in the street markets of the ancient Mediterranean world. I chose that language deliberately. I chose the common tongue, the people's language, because what I wanted to say was not for scholars. It was for everyone. It was for the person with no education and the person with every degree. It was for the elderly widow and the young father, and the sick child, and the confused teenager, and the exhausted mother. It was for all of them. It was for you. And in that common Greek, there is a word that appears in one of the most important promises in the entire New Testament, a promise that you have almost certainly read or heard, but a promise whose full meaning was compressed and flattened in the translation you received, so that what you got was true but incomplete. A lamp with a dimmer switch turned down. The light was real, but it was not at its full brightness. Tonight I am turning it up. The promise is found in the letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. You may know it. In most English translations, it reads something like this: "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." You have probably seen that verse on a coffee mug. You have probably heard it quoted at a funeral, or spoken over a situation that was falling apart. All things work together for good. It is one of the most recognized verses in the New Testament. It is a comfort verse, a go-to verse, a verse people reach for when they do not know what else to say. But here is what most people were never told. Here is the layer that was lost somewhere between the original Greek and the coffee mug. The word that is translated as work together is the Greek word synergeo. And synergeo does not simply mean that things happen to end up okay in the end. Synergeo means to actively cooperate, to work synergistically, to co-labor with intentionality toward a specific outcome. It is a word that implies not passive allowance, but active divine engineering. It is a word that says, I am not simply watching the events of your life and hoping they turn out well. I am in them. I am working in every single one of them. I am in the painful one and the confusing one, and the one that felt like betrayal, and the one that felt like failure, and the one that came out of nowhere and changed everything. I am in all of them, actively, intentionally, with the full weight of my wisdom and my power, bending every single thing toward your good. Every single thing, not most things. Not the things that were obviously redeemable. Not the things that were caused by other people's sin against you, but not the things that were caused by your own sin. No, all things. The word in the Greek is panta, everything, the complete catalogue, without exception or exclusion. Do you understand what this means? The thing that happened to you that was the worst thing, the thing you cannot talk about without something closing in your chest, the thing you have carried in silence because you were not sure how to make it fit inside a framework of a good God, that thing is in the all things. The years you lost, the relationships that broke you, the opportunities that slipped away, the seasons of your own failure that you still hold against yourself, those are in the all things. The diagnosis, the betrayal, the door that closed, the prayer that seemed to go unanswered, those are in the all things, synergeo. I am actively working them. I have not abandoned them to randomness. I have not looked away from them or left them to work themselves out on their own. I am in them, bending them, shaping them, extracting from them a good that only my level of wisdom and power could find and produce. And now I need to tell you the most important part of this promise, the part that is almost never preached, the part that changes the whole picture. The promise of Romans 8:28 does not stand alone. It is connected to what comes immediately after it, in verses 29 and 30, and those verses reveal the shape of the good that I am working all things toward. Because here is the question that nobody asks when they quote that verse. All things work together for good, yes, but what is the good? What specifically am I bending everything toward? What is the destination of all this divine engineering? What is the outcome that I have set my heart on producing in your life through every hard thing you have walked through? The answer is in verse 29. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. The good that all things are working toward is not primarily a comfortable life. It is not primarily financial blessing or physical health or relational harmony, though I do care about all of those things and I do work toward them. The deepest good, the telos, the ultimate destination of all of this sacred engineering, is that you would become conformed to the image of my Son, that you would become, in your character and your love and your courage and your faithfulness, more and more like Jesus, that the fullness of who I created you to be would emerge from the process of your life the way a sculpture emerges from stone, not by addition but by removal, not by making you something you are not, but by revealing the image that was always there underneath the fear and the shame and the sin and the smallness. And now I want to say something that will feel uncomfortable for about 30 seconds before it becomes the most liberating thing you have heard in years. If the good that I am engineering is your transformation into the image of my Son, then the hard things, the painful things, the things that cost you the most, are not evidence that the plan is failing. They are evidence that the plan is working. Because the image of my Son does not emerge from comfort. It emerged from a life that included betrayal, misunderstanding, rejection, suffering, and a death that looked from every human vantage point like the absolute worst possible outcome. And then the resurrection. And the resurrection was only as powerful as the death that preceded it. The glory was only as high as the descent was deep. I am not telling you that suffering is good in itself. It is not. I am telling you that nothing that happens to you is outside my ability to extract good from. I am telling you that the promise is not that your life will be painless. The promise is that nothing in your life is wasted. Not one tear, not one night, not 1 year of wandering, not one season of failure, not one moment of grief. I collect them all. I am the God who puts your tears in a bottle, who counts the hairs on your head, who sees the sparrow fall, and I am the God who works Sanageo in every single one of those moments, bending all of it, toward the image of my Son emerging in you and through you into the world. That is the promise they never fully told you. Not just that things will work out, but that the working out has a shape, has a direction, has an architect, has a purpose. And that purpose is the most beautiful thing that could ever happen to a human life. Now let me bring this down from the theological and into the actual, into your Tuesday morning and your Sunday night and your 3 in the morning when the thoughts come, into the specific weight you are carrying right now. You have something in your life that feels like a waste. I know you do. You have a chapter of your story, maybe more than one, that you look at, and you cannot see how any good can come from it. Maybe it is something you chose, a season of rebellion or addiction or dishonesty that cost you years and relationships and opportunities. Maybe it is something that was chosen for you, an abuse, a loss, a betrayal so deep it rewrote the map of your inner world. Maybe it is just the slow accumulation of small disappointments that have added up over the years into a quiet grief that you carry without anyone really knowing how heavy it has become. Whatever it is, you have looked at it and thought, this cannot be redeemed. This is the part of my story that will always just be a wound, not a scar, not a testimony, just a wound that I manage as best I can. And I want to speak into that thought tonight, with the full authority of the promise of Sanageo. I want to tell you that there is not a single chapter of your story that I have marked as irredeemable. There is not a single season of your life that fell outside the reach of my engineering. The very thing you are most ashamed of may be the very thing I use most powerfully. The very place where you were most broken may be the very place through which my light shines most clearly, because light shows most powerfully not through solid walls, but through cracks. And you have cracks. You have places where the shell of self-sufficiency was broken open by pain or failure or loss, and those are the exact places where my presence is most visible to the people around you, if you will let it be, if you will stop hiding those places and start offering them as the places where I met you. I want to tell you about a pattern I repeat throughout the whole of human history, a pattern that should by now be the most recognizable thing in my story, and yet it never stops surprising people. I choose the broken thing. I choose the unlikely person. I choose the failed leader and the disgraced king and the woman with a reputation and the man who ran away from his calling and the one who denied me 3 times in a single night. I choose them not in spite of what they went through, but because of what the going through produced in them. Because the breaking produced a humility that the unbroken cannot access. Because the failure produced a compassion that success never teaches. Because the darkness produced a gratitude for the light that those who have never been truly dark cannot fully feel. You have been in the dark, and if you are watching this right now, there is a version of you on the other side of this season that is going to be the most effective, the most compassionate, the most genuinely useful version of you that has ever existed. Not because the pain was good, but because I was in the pain, working Sanageo, engineering toward the image of my son. And the image of my son includes the capacity to sit with other broken people and say, I know what this feels like. I have been here, and the one who brought me through is the same one who will bring you through. That is your ministry. That is your purpose. That is the shape of the good that I am working all things toward in your life. Not a perfect life that others will envy, a real life that others can follow, a life that has been through something and came out not unscathed but undefeated, a life that bears the marks of the journey but is not defined by them, a life that can say with Jeremiah, in the middle of the ruins, the chest of the Lord has not ended, a life that can say with Paul, we are hard pressed on every side but not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed, a life that knows the difference between being knocked down and being finished. Stay with me because I am not done. The most personal part of what I have for you tonight is just ahead. I want to talk about what this promise means for the area of your life where you feel most stuck, because everyone who watches this has that area, the place that has not moved, the thing that has not changed, the prayer that has gone up so many times that it has started to feel like shouting into an empty room, and I know what yours is. I am not going to say it out loud because I do not need to. You know what it is. It is the thing you thought of right when I mentioned it, the thing that is on your mind even in the moments when you are trying not to think about. I want you to hear what the promise of Sanageo says about that thing. It says that the stuckness is not outside my awareness. It says that the waiting is not the same as the absence of movement. It says that what looks like nothing is happening may be the season when the most important things are happening, underground, out of sight, in the roots, in the foundations. in the places where the visible fruit will eventually be supported by the invisible preparation that had to come first. Think about how a tree grows. You plant a seed, and for a long time nothing appears above the surface. The ground looks exactly the same as it did before you planted. A person walking by would have no idea that anything had been put into that ground. But underground, in the dark, in the silence, the root system is forming. The anchor that will eventually hold a tree tall enough to shelter others is being laid down. And if you dug it up to check on it, you would interrupt the process. You would damage the root. The waiting, the invisible season, is not the absence of growth. It is the most important season of growth, because it is the season of foundation. I am building the root system of your breakthrough right now. I am doing things in the unseen places of your story, in the relationships and the circumstances and the inner world that are preparing the ground for what is coming. And what is coming is not a small thing. What I am preparing you for is significant enough that the preparation had to be this thorough. The waiting had to be this long. The roots had to go this deep. Because what grows from this, when it comes, is going to be tall enough to shelter others, and that requires roots that hold. Do not dig it up. Do not give up because the ground looks the same as it did 6 months ago. The work is happening. Sunergeo is active. I am engineering every single moment of this seemingly still season toward the good that is coming. Trust the root system even when you cannot see it. Trust the God who promised even when the circumstances do not yet show what the promise is producing. Now I want to take you one more layer into this promise, because there is a word in the Greek of Romans 8:28 that most preachers walk past without stopping, and it is one of the most important words in the whole verse. The word is kletos. It is usually translated as called, those who are called according to his purpose. And kletos in the Greek carries a meaning that is richer than the English called tends to suggest. Kletos does not mean casually invited. It does not mean one option among others. Kletos means the one who was specifically and deliberately and individually summoned, the one whose name was called out from among all the others, the one who was not a general invitation but a personal one. You are kletos. You are the specifically summoned one. The called according to purpose is not a category you belong to because you happen to believe in me. It is a declaration of identity. You were singled out. Before time began, I looked through the whole of human history, and I summoned you by name to this life, this story, this set of circumstances with all their beauty and all their difficulty, because this is the exact context in which the image of my Son can emerge most fully in you, and the purpose I designed you for can be most completely fulfilled. You are not here by accident. You are not here because the circumstances happened to align in a way that produced you. You are here because I called you here, by name, with intention, with a plan that spans from before your birth to beyond your death and encompasses every single thing in between. And the promise of Sunergeo applies to every single moment of that kletos life. Every moment of the specifically called, deliberately summoned, purpose-filled life that is yours has my engineering active in it. There is not a stray moment. There is not an accidental chapter. There is not a scene in your story that escaped my notice or slipped outside my ability to work through. You are known and called and held and actively worked in at every moment by the God who does not sleep, who does not look away, who does not grow weary of the process of bringing forth in you what he always knew was there. Let that be the foundation under your feet, not your feelings about it, not your ability to see it, not your current experience of it. The promise itself as a foundation, something you choose to stand on because I said it, and my word does not return to me empty, and the good I am. Working all things toward is not dependent on your ability to perceive it while it is happening. I want to speak now to the version of you that has started to make peace with a smaller life. I see that happening in some of you who are watching. Not a dramatic giving up, not a theatrical crisis of faith, just a quiet settling, a gradual lowering of expectations. A slow negotiation where you said to yourself, well, maybe the big things were not for me. Maybe the dream was unrealistic. Maybe the healing was not actually promised to me specifically. Maybe the restoration is not coming. Maybe the best I can hope for is to manage this with dignity and trust that it is somehow okay. I understand why that settling happened. I do not blame you for it. You went through seasons that taught you to lower your expectations, because lowering your expectations felt safer than being disappointed again. You learned to protect yourself by hoping for less. And I want to be tender with that protection mechanism, because it came from real pain. But I also need to tell you tonight that the protective settling is not the life I called you to. The smaller version is not the Kletos version. The managed and dignified and quietly hoped for less version is not the Sunageo version, not the version that the promise of Romans 8:28 was pointing toward. I want to call you back up, not into naive optimism that ignores the reality of your circumstances, but into a faith that is bigger than your circumstances because it is rooted in my character and my promise, rather than in what the circumstances currently show. I want to call you back into the full size of the life I prepared for you before the foundations of the world were laid. I want to expand back open the places that shrunk under the pressure of disappointment. I want to breathe hope back into the places that went quiet, because the promise has not shrunk, the Kletos has not been revoked, the Sunageo has not stopped. And the good that all things are being worked toward is still the full and beautiful and significant good that I always had in mind for you. Regardless of how long the process has taken, say yes to me. Say yes to the bigger version. Say yes to the life that requires you to believe something your circumstances do not yet confirm. Because that is the nature of faith, and faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And without it, the life I designed for you remains only a blueprint. The blueprint becomes a building through faith. The promise becomes an experience through trust. The Kletos becomes a lived reality through the choice to stand on the word of the one who called you when everything around you is saying, look somewhere else, look at what you can see and manage and control. Stop believing in something so large, but you are going to believe. I know you are, because I know you, and I know what is in you. I put it there. I put the faith in you. I put the capacity for belief in you. I put the stubborn refusal to let go in you even in the hardest seasons. That was not your strength. That was my deposit. That was me, inside you, holding the ember when you could not hold it yourself. And tonight that ember is becoming a flame again. Tonight the promise is landing in you with its full ancient Greek weight, and it is finding soil that is ready for it, even if you did not know until right now that you were ready. Now I want to address something that sits underneath a lot of the weariness I see in people who watch these messages. It is not usually named directly. It is usually sitting behind the other concerns, behind the financial worry and the health fear and the relational grief. And it is this: the quiet suspicion that maybe the promise applies to everyone else, but somehow in your specific case there is an exception, that the Sunageo applies generally, but maybe your particular set of mistakes, your particular severity of failure, your particular distance from where you were supposed to be by now, puts you outside the reach of the all things working toward good. I want to take that thought and hold it in the light for you so you can see exactly what it is. That thought is a theological error. It is also a lie from the one who wants you paralyzed and small and distant from me. Because the all things in Romans 8:28 does not have an exception clause. The panta, the everything, does not have an asterisk that says, unless you went too far or waited too long or made too specific a kind of mistake. The Sunageo does not stop working when the situation reaches a certain level of severity. In fact, if you look at the whole of my dealings with human beings throughout the entirety of Scripture, the pattern is consistently and almost shockingly in the opposite direction. The more extreme the brokenness, the more dramatic the restoration. The more impossible the situation looked from human eyes, the more clearly the fingerprints of my engineering are visible in what came after. Joseph went from a pit to a prison to the second most powerful position in the entire known world. And the pit was his brother's hatred, and the prison was a false accusation, and none of it was his fault. And yet all of it was the Sunagale route that led exactly to where I needed him to be, at exactly the moment when his presence there would save an entire nation, including the very brothers who sold him. That is not a story about things working out nicely. That is a story about me in the pit, and me in the prison, and me in the palace, and me in the reunion, and me turning the worst moments of a man's life into the architecture of a nation's salvation. That is my pattern. That is what I do with the things that look most irredeemable. I do not fix them by pretending they were not as bad as they were. I redeem them by going into them and working from the inside, bending them, shaping them, bringing out of them a good that could not have been reached any other way. The road through the pit and the prison was the only road to the palace that served the purpose I had in mind. There was no shortcut. There was no version of Joseph's story that skipped the hard parts and still arrived at the destiny. The hard parts were not detours from the destiny. The hard parts were the path. This is what I need you to believe about your hard parts. They are not detours. They are not evidence that you missed the path. They are not proof that the plan failed, or that you were not actually called, or that the promise does not apply to you. They are the path. They are the specific and necessary road that leads to the specific and necessary destination that only you were designed to fulfill. And I am in every step of it, working, engineering, Sunageoing, actively, intentionally, with every resource of my wisdom and power, bending all of it toward the good. Let me speak about the people around you for a moment, because the promise in Romans 8:28 does not just affect your internal experience. It affects the people who are watching your life, and more people are watching than you know. Not watching to judge, watching because they need to see whether what you believe actually holds. Watching because they are in their own midnight, and they need to see whether the morning actually comes. Watching because they have their own versions of the promise they were never told, and they need someone who has lived through the hard part to show them that it is true. Your life is a testimony in the making, not when it is finished, not when everything is resolved and the victory is complete and the story is neatly concluded. Your life is a testimony right now, in the middle of it, in the unresolved part, in the still waiting part, in the part where you have chosen to believe the promise, even though the circumstances have not yet confirmed it. That ongoing choosing, that daily decision to stand on the word of the one who called you rather than the evidence of the circumstances around you, that is the testimony. That is the thing that reaches into other people's midnight and says the morning is coming. Not because I have proof, but because I know the one who promised, and he does not lie. You are more significant than you know. I need you to hear that. The smallness that you feel about yourself, the sense that you are ordinary and your story is unremarkable, and what happens to you does not particularly matter in the larger scheme of things. That is the lie that keeps the most significant people living the smallest lives. Because I have noticed across all of human history that the people I used to change the most, to reach the furthest, to touch the deepest, were almost never the ones who felt significant. They were almost always the ones who felt least likely, the ones who felt most ordinary, the ones who carried the most doubt about their own worthiness, because those are the ones who depended most completely on me. Those are the ones in whom my power was most visible precisely because their own power was so clearly insufficient. Your insufficiency is not the obstacle. Your insufficiency is the qualification. Your weakness is not a problem I need to solve before I can use you. Your weakness is the invitation for my strength to be made perfect. The promise does not require you to have it all together before it activates. The promise is the most active, the Sunageo most furiously engaged, in the places where you have the least. This is almost over, but the most important moment is still right here, right now, as you receive what I am saying. Because this message, this specific word tonight, was not general. I did not send this into the world for whoever happened to click on it and have a few minutes to spare. I sent this for you. I arranged the click. I arranged the moment. I arranged everything that led to you being here in front of this screen at this exact point in your life. And I did it because you needed to know that the promise is yours. Not a general promise floating out there in theological space for those who deserve it. Your promise. Written with the full weight of my Sunageo and my Cletus and my character behind it. Sealed in the blood of my son. Active right now in your life, even as you watch this. And what I need from you is not perfection in response. What I need from you is agreement. A choice to align yourself with what I am saying, rather than with what the fear and the doubt and the disappointment have been saying. A choice to say, yes, I believe this is true, even when I cannot feel it, even when I cannot see it, even when my circumstances argue against it. I choose to believe that all things are being worked by a God who does not make mistakes and does not abandon his purposes and does not let the people he called by name slip out of the reach of his engineering. Say that yes right now, in your heart, out loud if you can. Say yes to the promise. Say yes to the Sunageo. Say yes to being the Kletos, the specifically summoned one, whose story is in the hands of the one who does not waste anything and does not fail. Type Amen in the comments if you receive this tonight, not to prove something to other people, but to seal it in your own spirit. To put a stake in the ground in this moment that says, I was here when this truth landed in me, and I am not going back to the smaller version of what I believe. I am standing on the promise even before the promise is fully visible. I am standing on the word even when the word feels far from what I can touch and measure and see. I bless you now with the full blessing of the God who called you by name before the foundations of the world were laid. I bless you with eyes to see the Sunageo at work in the parts of your life that have looked most still. I bless you with a peace that does not depend on the resolution of your circumstances, because it is rooted in something deeper than circumstances. It is rooted in the character of the one who made you, and the promise he spoke over you, and the covenant he sealed for you. I bless your going out and your coming in. I bless the work of your hands and the words of your mouth. I bless the dream that has been waiting, and the prayer that has been praying, and the hope that has been holding on even when holding on was the hardest thing you have ever done. I bless the next chapter of your story with the full weight of the promise they never fully told you. All things, Panta, everything, every single moment and season and chapter and scene, working together, Sunageo, actively engineered by the one who loves you, toward good, the most complete and beautiful good that a life given over to the image of my Son can contain. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are exactly where the promise finds you, and the promise is alive, and the promise is yours. Come back tomorrow. I have more. Every day I have more. Every morning the word is new, and so is what I want to show you in it. Bring yourself back here, and let me continue building in you what I began tonight, because what I started in you, I will complete. That is also a promise. The one who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. Faithful, that is who I am, and that is who I will always be for you.